say that you're in a competition of how do you throw away decades of actual IP, games people loved, and everything that made you popular in the first place in order to go ahead and chase one specific type of game, one specific type of genre, and the only thing you're allowed to do is to dump millions of dollars into that same genre over and over again, and if nothing fits that mold, then you throw it away and cast it aside. Seems pretty easy, right? That is until you find out the person you're competing against is in fact PlayStation. Wow! So what are we talking about here? Well, it turns out that there has been some more breaking news from Shuhei Yoshida, who's gone around to do even more interviews. And every time he talks, we get more and more information about what's actually happening at PlayStation. And the crazier part is, it's almost like it's exactly what everybody's been saying from the beginning of time who actually likes PlayStation. Things are not going great at that company and things have to change, but they're going to be changing in the worst way possible for quite some time. And the better part about it isn't just the fact that those things are still happening at Sony right now. The better part is after the Nintendo Direct that we had recently, everyone has been losing their minds trying to do backflips, double twists, and everything they possibly can to put themselves into a pretzel on how to actually sit there and fight for a company that has no idea they even exist and try to then placate and say that PlayStation is not a third party when they're licensing their old IPs from the same dev studio that they shut down to other publishers to put their games out there, even though they said that those games would make money anymore. It's not... what? So let's do this. Let's go over what Shuhei actually said, and then we'll talk about it and see exactly why PlayStation has completely lost the plot. In an interview with AV Watch that was translated, Yoshida explained, "I was in charge of the first party, so I was asked to make a game that was powerful enough to sell hardware. When you make something like that, the company pushes you a lot. The company wanted such things, and while we had to make them, the scale of development and the sales required were getting bigger and bigger." So what are we talking about? Well, it turns out that small snippet of what Yoshida said was about how Japan Studio was closed because PlayStation didn't want to make any more AA games, which really is the craziest thing of all, because like I said earlier, if you watched the Nintendo Direct a couple of days ago, you would have noticed a couple of old AA Japan Studio IPs launching on the Nintendo Switch, PC, and basically everywhere else. That's right. Patapon 1 and 2, Everybody's Golf, and Freedom Wars are all PlayStation IPs that have been dormant from Japan Studios, and these IPs were licensed off to Bandai Namco to then put those games as multi-platform games on other devices. The fact that PlayStation is literally saying, hey, we don't know what to do with these IPs. We don't know how to go around with this. We don't know what's actually happening. All we know how to do is make a third-person cover-based action-adventure game with stealth elements. And if we can't shoehorn Aloy into it somewhere somehow, then we don't know what's actually happening in video games anymore. The fact that they sat there and they told Shuhei, hey, you need to go ahead and make a game to sell systems. Sure, back then that might have been the thing in the PS1, PS2 era, even in the PS3. But as we see now currently, the most games being played are third-party published games that are either Fortnite, Call of Duty, and anything else that every casual named John Smith or Keith or David are playing right now. Shout out to John Smith, Keith, and David, by the way. Nice guys, besides Keith, who tries to punch holes in the drywall. But let's go... But the thing is, it gets even crazier, because as Shuhei explains later on, here's what's actually happening and what did happen to him before. Shuhei added that the company creators were coming up with great ideas, and while they were very creative and interesting, they were ultimately deemed AA. He said that Japan Studios ceased to exist soon after he stepped down as president, an event brought on by PlayStation's corporate restructuring. Oh, that corporate restructuring? The same one that wanted to go around and make 12 live service games that in the end all got canceled anyways? That same corporate restructuring that literally had probably their slam dunk IP of Last of Us to have a multiplayer component that basically everybody who played on PlayStation wanted, shove that into a locker and never be seen the light of day ever again because Naughty Dog is so pretentious and far up its own ass that they didn't want to just do the work for it in the first place. That same corporate restructuring that is going around and putting all their games on PC, soon to be day and date, because we've shrunk the window down from when it was going to be to where it is right now to 14 months. Bro, that same corporate restructuring that has given us the same exact game over and over again. That same corporate restructuring that has literally said you should buy the remakes and remasters because that way it'll fund the new games, even though that they're not doing anything for Bloodborne, and I hate Bloodborne, honestly. I know, hot take. I think it's pretty mid. And they still haven't done anything with that because that'll easily print the most money, but they'll do Days Gone instead. This company, bro. What happened to the company where I was like so proud to own like their consoles? What happened to PlayStation where I was like, yo, PS1, PS2, best consoles of all time. Probably PS2 right up there next to the SNES. But like, what? How? And people will sit there and ride this company into the ground. Oh, they make it the best games. Oh, the exclusives are paramount to the industry and full of quality. When they sit there and rake you over the coals, making you spend another $80 for a disc drive of a upgrade of a console that is the biggest half-step measure you've honestly ever seen. Let's keep going. I'm so mad. I'm so mad. Shuhei continues by saying, at that time, Japan Studios was a team that was good at making AA, and it was a studio. In that case, it probably doesn't match what the company and first party are looking for, explained Yoshida. This right here is exactly the biggest problem that I have with PlayStation. People sit here and talk about like, oh, Alex, you just hate Sony. You're a PlayStation hater. You're an Xbox fanboy. Again, I can go ahead and pull up all my PS1, PS2, and PS3 games that honestly dwarf the majority of PS4 and PS5 players right now. Games that you guys have never even heard of or seen of that are literally classics in the industry that are incredibly difficult to find and get. I have games that are worth more than the actual PS5, but hey, let me not flex on that one. The thing is though, what we're looking at here is the fact that PlayStation has zero idea on how to actually make games. I said it. They don't know what they're doing. They have no idea what they're doing. They never have known what they're doing. Since the PS2 era, they've fallen off a cliff as to how to make a video game. Why? Because ever since the PS3 and Uncharted came out, they've stuck to that same formula over and over and over again. Third-person, cover-based, action-adventure, stealth elements. And every single game afterwards that you want to pull up and see follows that exact same formula. They found one thing that worked and they're milking it dry to the bone. They didn't do anything to diversify their games, and if they did, they shut those studios down, closed those studios, or even made really bad bets like Concord. And this is what I'm talking about. Instead of actually taking Japan studios and making them do AA games in the meantime with idealized budgets and actually having good expectations of what the games would sell, they shut that studio down because they didn't fit that mold. The problem is dumping more money into a game does not mean it's going to immediately have quality across the board. It's just going to mean you have to sell more copies of that game to do that. Spider-Man 2 was a perfect example. That game was an exclusive at the time. Now it's on PC, but even then launched broken, buggy, and full of bugs. There was no quality about it. It was Mary Jane and her jaw going around taking everybody down and then going along that way. And you see the same thing with Horizon as well. People go online and they're like, I don't know how anybody could hate the combat in this game, and then show the most boring, cinematic, not playing the video game combat I've honestly ever seen. You press two buttons, it takes the control away from you as the player, makes you watch a cutscene while you're playing to do the animation, and then puts you back in the actual combat. Now, if you want to talk about combat and gameplay, Doom Eternal. Go play Doom Eternal. Go play Devil May Cry 5. Go play a game where you have to control the buttons that you press. The agency, the control has moved away from the actual player in so many of these games. The thing is, keeping Japan Studio afloat would have given them the ability to have a lot of those gaps that we have right now full with all those AA games, where people are literally starving for games to play right now on their PlayStation. They're starving so hard, they're buying Xbox games. Those same Xbox games that they said were trash, Game Pass fodder, and were just garbage in the first place. They're buying them. Not just buying them normally, they're buying the $100 editions. Imagine the fact that games now take 5 to 6 years to complete. So you don't even get sequels to the actual game you had in the first place in the original console. You have to wait for the next gen to get the sequel, which is how we're looking at things right now. So imagine if you have a 5 to 6 year cycle for game dev, but in between those 5 to 6 years, you have 2 years in between of small AA games filling those gaps between the large AAA or quadruple A games taking up that major space. You would have a consistent flow of games all the time. You wouldn't have to worry about anybody else. And instead of just keeping Japan Studio open and active to make those AA games, to have a proper budget and scope and size and actually market those games correctly, what they do instead is they shut down Japan Studio and then go out and spend all that money to third-party money hat other games off other platforms. They could have just made their own games, and then they would have been fine. But they shut down Japan Studios to make Team Asobo, or whatever the hell they want to call them, to then make Astrobot, but Astrobot only sold 1 million copies. That's not fixing the problem. The article continues by saying Japan Studio was part of the most lauded titles in PlayStation's catalog: Everybody's Golf, Ape Escape, Loco Roco, Knack, Patapon, Gravity Rush, and many more. While other studios might pick up these franchises like Bandai Namco has done with the new Everybody's Golf Hot Shots title, some of these games are now co-signed to history. And again, they're not wrong. Like I said before, Patapon 1 and 2, Everybody's Golf Hot Shots, and Freedom Wars are now being put on multiple platforms. The problem is that now we have so many other games, like they said, co-signed to just being historical things. Look, I mean, like, I do this every time. You know, I go out here and I do the same thing every single time. I don't know why I have to do this. It's honestly ridiculous. Because literally, Rogue Galaxy, they could bring that back. It's theirs. They own it. Like Dark Cloud 1 and 2, hello, it easily could be done right there. And Metal Gear Solid 3 stuck on the PlayStation 3. The only way to get it off is by emulating it. There's so many games that are stuck to consoles that are literally dead, that have no more support, that you can't pull off anymore, that the only way to get them is through emulation or going off eBay and selling your left nut to try and get the actual game at a normal, decent price. But no, they don't want to do that. They don't want to keep the studio open. They don't want to keep making games. Look at the fact that Saga Frontier 2 was announced by Square Enix recently. And honestly, I can't wait for Xenogears to be redone as well for the PC and other platforms. But the fact that this game, this random ass Saga Frontier game, a game that sold like 2 copies, I was one of the people that actually bought this game, that it needed an actual pocket PlayStation to play correct, to get other skills from, is going around and being remade for PC and multiple platforms, and it's selling. People are buying it because they're like, bro, nostalgia. 30 years ago, what a great game. I can't wait to play it. I bought a copy even though I own it physically. Why would PlayStation literally do this to themselves? And we see the same sort of mentality happen over and over again. The closing of Japan Studio. Jim Ryan talking about why would anybody want to play old games? The fact that the PlayStation 5 doesn't have backwards compatibility. Even software emulation would have been ideal for that console. I would have bought a PS5 if it had software capability to actually run my PS1 and PS2 games. I don't even need PS3 emulation. I have a PS3. It's still young enough to even be able to find pretty easily. But PS1 and PS2, these systems and these consoles are going to crap out at some point. Capacitors will blow, and I'll have no other choice but to actually play those games besides trying to find one and fix it myself. They literally hate their history. I feel like that's what it is. I feel like PlayStation literally hates where it came from. It hates its creativity. It hates where it was born from. It hates that it was actually trying to go out there and do something different and fun and weird. I feel like it honestly almost even hates their own Japanese heritage of the kinds of games that Japanese players have always wanted and people in the West have always loved for Japanese games to play. I feel like they hate it. I feel like they're ashamed of it. That's what it feels like to me. Like they don't even want to look at it. Like, oh God, we can never go back to Vib Ribbon. We can never go back to Parappa the Rapper. We can never go back to having fun. Every game has to have a political theme and message. And I sit there and I weep for this company because I actually care about PlayStation. I actually like that company back when the PS1 and PS2 days. And to sit there and see Hiroki Totoki say things like they don't have enough IPs to make new games. when they shut down Japan Studio, when they don't want to make AA games, when they shut down 12 live service games, when they could have had everything under the sun if they just would have let people just be creative in the first place. And this is what they do. This is how they act. Again, they have lost the plot. And it isn't just that, but this quote by Sean Layden really hits the nail on the head for me as to why PlayStation is where it's at right now. Layden in an interview said this: I guess you get new genre activity at the indies level, where there's more risk tolerance. You have got to take the risk. Otherwise, you're not going to get anywhere. But I'm afraid that the current cost of game development with AAA console titles costing in the hundreds of millions squeezes risk tolerance out of the room. If you're looking at something that's going to clock in at $160 million to produce, the immediate reaction of the finance guy is, okay, what is this comparable to? How are you going to make me feel better? Can you show me the trend line is going to be exactly like Grand Theft Auto so I can feel fine putting money behind it? It results in a lot of copycats, a lot of sequels. Give me GTA 7 because I know how to plot that course. And that's the problem with gaming in general. It's not just PlayStation, it's gaming in general, period. When we talk about games being the same purple yellow color scheme, the same exact type of genre, the same hero shooter, the same bland, boring, repetitive thing, look at the past 10 years of gaming. Every time we've seen a trailer, it's been what? Oh, that was cool, I guess. It looks like every other game I played. Nothing new, nothing different. But then go back and look at what people did about Cuphead. When Cuphead was on screen for like 2 seconds, everybody lost their minds about that game, at the art style and what it did. Because it took a risk. It did something different. The art style was different. Everyone's ubiquitous thought process of gotta use Unreal Engine, gotta be third person, gotta be a cinematic experience, gotta tell a heartfelt story about a father and daughter, gotta tell a story about like love and loss, gotta be a political message. It's all boring, rote, and garbage. Nobody wants to experience that anymore. People are tired of it. And the fact that gaming is so big now, the thing is that the suits in the room don't care. They don't care about good games. They don't care about what's actually fun. They don't care about actually creating a new kind of actual audience for that game title and then growing that up from the bottom up. They want immediate returns. They want the flashiest graphics, and they want to be able to be like, huh, look at that, Bob. Huh, look at that. Look at that. Look at that game. Look how good that looks on my 8K TV, huh? Yeah, look at that. Look at that. Look at that. Look at that. Amazing. Play it? No, I don't play it. It just looks good. But I don't play it. No. We're going golfing? We're going golfing, right? That's what it is. They're not making games for people who actually play video games. They're making games for people who just sit there and say, well, oh, another cutscene? Cool. That'll be fun to watch. Oh, wow. It's like watching a movie. Man. Every time you hear somebody say The Last of Us is their favorite game of all time, that tells me one thing and one thing only. They don't play video games! If you think The Last of Us is the best game ever made, you don't play video games. It is what it is, bro. This incessant inability for PlayStation to know exactly what they're doing, to not get behind AA games, to not sit there and say, hey, there's gaps in our actual development pipeline. We can do something better. We can make more products. We can create other kinds of games, go from AA and then build them into AAA titles. So that way we have an audience for them. They grow over time and they can hedge bets that are going to be correct instead of betting for live service for quick cash grabs. They don't do that. Instead, they do the opposite. They go through and they say, whoa, you know what? We got to make sure Bob and Jill in accounting and finance can give us more money so we can make more games. How are we going to do that? Slim Days gone again. I don't hate PlayStation. I hate what PlayStation has become. And the fact that people still don't get that and call me a PlayStation hater is the most insane thing, because I honestly love PlayStation more than any fanboy on the internet right now, except I have the balls to call them out on their bullshit. This company, man. Signing out major games that were made by Japan Studios to Bandai Namco, and then have the audacity to be like, let's shut down Japan Studios. Watch those games sell. Watch Patapon 1 and 2 sell great. Watch how Hot Shots Golf sells great. That would be the biggest. I would love that. I would love that more than anything, because that would be the biggest egg on the face of this company to sit there and be like, you fucking idiots. You ruined it again. Good job. So ladies and gentlemen, let me know what you guys think in the comments section down below. If you want to see more of this kind of content, more PC board reviews, gaming news, fanboy content, my hot takes in the gaming industry like this, and live streams every Saturday night at 8:45 p.m. Eastern, subscribe to the channel. We're on our way to 79,000 subs. I just want to say thank you guys so very much for that. If you want to go ahead and get Discord access or emotes during live streams, become a YouTube member. It's as low as $1. If you don't want to spend the buck, don't sweat it. Come on down Saturday night, 8:45 p.m. Eastern. Trust me, you have a hell of a time on the live stream. It's honestly insane. With all that being said, though, thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you have a great one, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace!